Hey, greetings, everybody. We have Brendan Mason here for the next episode of Sirdcast. Brendan, thanks so much for taking the time to chat.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you.
So we've got Ollie Fisher here. I think he's heavily recovered from his last trip, and we're glad to have him back. And I think hopping into the usual questions first, love to just kind of get where you're coming from, Brendan, your story from the beginning. Like, how did you get your start drumming?
Yeah. So my parents both were involved with fife and drum corps when they were little, and that's actually where they met. It was a very big family thing. My dad had two brothers who played fife in a fife and drum corps. My mom had, I believe, two of my aunts played in a fife and drum corps locally there as well. So, anyways, long story short, when we grew up with our parents, we had no choice but to be in fife and drum corps. Not that we were forced into it, but it was just something that was a part of, our family and our upbringing and, what we did on the weekends. So I got my first start at Colonel John Chester when I was 6 years old, playing in a junior fife and drum corps. And that's kind of where it all started.
That's incredible. I mean, we have so many of our own connections from back in those days. And I feel like one of the coolest things for me was always to know your parents. My parents knew your parents, and we'd go to these events, and it was totally a family affair with your brothers and your sister. And honestly, I think that's always what made fife and drum super special and super unique. And so we've done tons of other things over our careers together and have met tons and tons of people. But I know Ollie has some questions about maybe some specific highlights or something like that.
Yes, because for me, I met you first time when we were in 2014 when we went to the travel with the STPV, and I met also your whole family. So you come out of a very important family. I mean, I met your father and your brother, and so I could see you are really a musician, and also I could see that the culture was really close. So that was really interesting. But then I saw you when you went to Japan. And this is something what I really, for me, from an outsider, you are also quite next to Mark, one of the great ambassadors of American drumming globally. And I think, let's talk a little bit about that, because as you said, you are really 150% from where you are, Connecticut, home base, the right stadium, I would say. But you had always this flair to show that to other cultures and work as a teacher. So talk a little bit about that, how this came up.
Yeah. I don't know. I still have to, think about that every now and then, like, how exactly this all unfolded. But really quickly, it was China, not Japan. I just want to make that distinction there. So when I was, first of all, I was going through a divorce, and I had nothing going on in my life. This opportunity came across to go to China, and I said, sure, I'll go. I had no idea what was the plan was. I had no idea what it was about. I just got on a plane and went, and it certainly was a really cool opportunity. And I've had some other opportunities since then. But just in general, I've always wanted to, I've told this to Mark before, I always wanted to be like the Earl Sturts of the next generation, where I was teaching drums pretty much full time. And for the longest time, I had to ask myself, am I a fraud? Am I actually able to do this? Am I actually able to, support myself, a future family, by teaching drums? And it's been not easy, but I've stayed the course, and I've continued to do it in kind of my own way. And I've had some wonderful opportunities, as you said before, to teach in different places in different countries. And I'm very grateful, very thankful for these chances, because I don't know how they came about or where they came about, but they keep coming, and I'm very grateful.
This is really a dream of a lot of drummers, especially young drummers who want to make their hobby to a profession. And I think, as you said, I mean, your whole family are drummers, but you are the one and only who's really lives from it 100% and professionally drumming. And what did you have to do to achieve that?
Well, get a divorce. That was the first thing.
Sorry,
No, I'm just joking.
No, Mark and I are not allowed to do that. So you have to
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah. No, that's not it at all. That's a silly answer. But I don't know. I think I had these opportunities that would come up, and I always like talk myself out of them. Like, you're not good enough to do it. You're not worthy of this. You're not. Nothing's going to come of that. And I've seen those opportunities go right by me, and I've seen other people take those opportunities and run with them. And I would always just be so pissed at myself. Like, why did I do that? Why didn't I take that opportunity? So, it's kind of a weird answer, but at this point in my life, it's just like, yeah, I just got to say yes to a lot of things. Now I'm a little bit more picky with a family and with, other things going on with what I could do. But when those special opportunities come, I just go with my first instinct and just say, yeah, we're going to do it.
I love that. I mean, honestly, you are hitting on probably one of the most influential and important conversations that any professional, I think, has. Not just professional musician, but professional period, where if you're looking at something from the scarcity mindset of, man, this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. If you're looking at it from an abundance mindset where you're like, look, I need to grow. I need to I have to have more capacity. How do I stretch myself as a player, as a person, as a professional? The opportunities start to they start just showing up, because all of a sudden the reputation gets out there as you're someone who's going to show up. You're someone who's going to be at a thing. You're somebody who's going to be, no one nails it 100%. I mean, I love the analogy. It's like, some of the Hall of Fame baseball players were good 1 out of 3 times at the plate. So if they have a 300 average out of 1,000, they're like a Hall of Famer. So like the percentage in the music industry, in some places, okay, if you fail and you fail hard once, okay, you're done. But like, what is the space of growth when it comes to an experimental community, which I think fifing and drumming and rudimental drumming very much is? It's a creative environment. It's a transformative environment. And I think you have that ability of, if I just show up and I be a part of the process, all of a sudden people are going to say, I want that person to be at my thing, because they're going to show up and they're going to want to be just creative, innovative, and collaborative. And all of a sudden the magic starts to happen. And I think there's people that say the miracle always happens in the stretch. It's the stretch where you're going, I don't know if I can really pull it off. And then all of a sudden the magic happens. I love it.
And you also said in there too, being collaborative and being able to work, with a situation that's already there. I think that's extremely important. I've seen so many people that have showed up to teaching something and they've just taken over completely. And people are looking, we're also here as well. So the skill to be able to assess a situation, to look around and say, how do I fit into this, and how can I enhance it, make it better, and how can I learn from it, is super important in being able to read those situations.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole game of music, right? So if you're an effective music educator, which is essentially what we are, and we're trying to figure out how to read the room, how to connect with the lowest skill level, the highest skill level. And in that moment, your brain is trying to basically compute what is the information I need to put out there to get everybody on the same page. And I think that's where you and I, when we start chatting about these things late nights at Deep River or Westbrook, like we can sit there and just go for hours on going, all right. Because I know for you and for me, like you've forced me to level up in my life so many times, just because of how you think, your quality of playing, like your talents. And I mean, that's just something for me. I'm incredibly grateful just to know you and be a friend of yours, because you've made me a way better person time and time and time and time again. And sometimes those times have been hard as hell. But I'm so grateful that you've been a part of my life and part of my experience.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And likewise, I how I feel about you. So,
Most of the
ah,
time.
shucks.
This is Mark. This is a very good point, and I think you are on the same way, a little bit similar like Brendan. You are not only let's say 150% blood drummer, Brendan. You are also a very good solist. So you're an individual drummer. I mean, and this is a little bit. I think in my experience, is you have this, like you said, this group thing. You are embedded in a very important group. You've grown up in it. Then it comes your personal needs of intellectual drumming for your own. And then you are maybe also composing, writing, showing, whatever. So where are you at the moment? Because I think now I saw you have now small kids. You talk a lot about family. I think the good thing in our hobby, just to finish that question off and to be clear, it changes from young when we're getting older. And for me, and we know you a lot, and you also show a lot. But where are you at the moment? Where
Yeah.
What is you in your mind? You know what I mean? I want to ask you. So
yeah.
Where are you today?
Yeah. So, first of all, I didn't want to glaze over what Mark had said before. Mark has led the way with, being able to teach this art form and bring it up internationally. So, we're all following in his footsteps. He's done an incredible job. So I just wanted to put that out there. But where I am at personally, I left my job. I was teaching general music down at a Catholic school, and I had started a fife and drum program down there. And unfortunately, I live an hour and a half away from there, and having kids here and the commute, which was 3 hours of my day, I just had to make a choice to leave there. So what I'm doing right now is just trying to set up my studio at home. I have a studio that is down the road called the American Drum Company that I teach out of, that Kara's brother owns the building. And just trying to build up my individual lesson base, and really pushing that. Creatively, I keep thinking that the next 2 weeks here, I'm going to have a lot of time to get a lot of work done, but it's been pretty hard to manage all that stuff and get some playing done for myself. It's been a really long time. In fact, when we were at PASIC, that was the first time in a really long time that I actually had to take a piece of music and learn something and work at it in a really quick time. And we crunched it. And man, I loved that process. I loved the feeling of being up against the wall and having to pull something out that, wasn't embarrassing. So to me, I miss those opportunities, but I'm really enjoying everything kind of being a little bit slower the last couple of years, and being able to hang out with my family, watch my son grow up and enjoy, looking at drummers and, holding drumsticks in every room. And, that to me is more special than anything right now.
So you mentioned PASIC, and actually it's a question a bit, how was this year PASICs? Because I couldn't join. Actually, we planned to go, Mark, to make an introduction. I saw a lot of videos, I think a lot of pictures. That must be a good time. So how was it this year in this time?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it was pretty normal. I didn't really notice anything different. We had to wear masks indoor. We had to show our vaccination card at the beginning of the events, and that was it.
But how about the performances? It's a get together, see each other. I think even more important than ever. But maybe also Mark, I don't know. I just wanted to know: does it have an effect from your? Let's say, did you have a lot of new compositions you presented, or new products came up during this time of everyone had to stay at home? I don't know.
Yeah, so, just so to clarify, so people, if they don't know what PASIC is, it's the Percussive Art Society International Convention. It's held every year in Indianapolis. It's the international convention for the Percussive Art Society. And in Indianapolis, they have the Rhythm Scene Center. The Rhythm Center that's there is the actual home headquarters for PAS, Percussive Art Society. And there are, the drum set from Ringo Starr, from John Bonham, marimbas from, xylophones from Morris Goldenberg. I mean, all sorts of Deegan marimbas. It's really an incredible place. And so they have this international convention every year in Indy. And of course, during the pandemic, they had to do a virtual one the last year or so. But Brendan was a featured performer for the Drummers Heritage concert that we put together there, the clinic that we put together. And I think what I thought was amazing, Brendan, was watching the hang prior to the clinic at the Airbnb. So folks are staying at hotels, things like that. There are clumps of people that get together with an Airbnb. And, Brendan was there with Alex Caldell, Jeremy Marks, Dave Loyal, and they're putting together this collaborative piece like we were talking about earlier. And you've got Martijn and Sander from the Dutch Marines that are there kind of watching, some guys from the Blue Coats, some guys from Pipe Band, and they're all in this place. And it's kind of like this drummer's mecca. And we're watching Brendan and this team of like crazy world-class drummers collaboratively putting this magic together right in front of your face. So PASIC could have been a complete bust, which it was not at all. But that one moment watching them put that together was like you watched magic happening in real time. It was like Drummers Disney World with like fireworks going off. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. I I think to me, and I'll get in conversations with Mark all the time or anybody else. We got to do this project. We got to put this out there, and to actually see it happen. I don't know how many times that we've had a conversation. We should do this. We should do that, and then it just doesn't work out because there's always just a million things going on. So to be able to actually work and play with my friends that I never get to play with, and to work on something educationally, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I do think so. PAS is always looking for collaborative partners, which I think is also very cool. So Joshua Simons, who's the executive director there, has been doing a fantastic job, and Julie Davila is going to be the next PAS president. And so there's always this kind of question between, a classical percussionist, a rudimental drummer, a more mallet player, seasoned person. And Joshua he's done all of it. And he's done it from an events management point of view. And he's really been able to put together a very unique blend of all of the different worlds of percussion, from drum set to marching to everything else. And he's been very gracious with the space to allow marching and rudimental drumming to have a home at PASIC, which I think has been incredible. And so next year is the 20th anniversary of Robin Engelman's original Drummers Heritage concert, which was a 3-hour rudimental drumming concert that spanned Alphonse Grieder to Jack Pratt, to Jeff Queen, to Jim Kilpatrick, to the drumline Bethune Cookman that did the movie Drumline, to Camp Chase Fife and Drum. It was amazing. They had this whole big concert. And so next year there's moves to make a 20th anniversary kind of repeat, not a 3-hour long one. Nick Antanasio was there, I think somewhere in like hour 2.5. And people were they were getting antsy in their seats, and this old gentleman walks out there kind of meagerly behind this bass drum and then beats the living what out of it, and it just rocked everybody's world. So we're going to start building that up for next year. But I think PASIC it's back. I think there's room for Seared. I think there's room for other international rudimental drummers or even concert percussionists that want to come from other countries. There's always some team that's either trying to come from Norway or Singapore or South Africa that's trying to be there. And Brendan has been an incredible ambassador on behalf of the Marching Percussion Committee, which he's been a member of for a long time. And being able to just, start a conversation, to coin Philip Ruche and David Lindbergh. It all starts with a coffee.
Great. But that gives me now leads to the next question, Brendan. We talk about this traditional drumming, modern drumming. What is your view a little bit on that?
Say that again. I'm sorry. What was the last part?
Mark mentioned about the mix in PASIC with the modern drumming, the percussionist drumming. It's all these facets of contemporary, hybrid, traditional. I mean, and you are of course living and breathe that. How do you see a little bit where we end up to, and what is your opinion on that and how you see the situation of the drumming?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a place for everything. Everything should evolve. I mean, if it doesn't evolve, it's dead. So, things have to move forward. But there is a place for everything. And I think when you look at like the fife and drum community, particularly up in New England, it is that microcosm where you can look at, a Moodus Fife and Drum Corps who's been playing the same way since 1770. And then you can look at a group like the Connecticut Blues or the Old Guard or the Patriots, where I'm at, where, they're taking an historical art form, but they are moving it forward and trying to, push the boundaries of what is able to be done on the drum. So to me, there's a place for all of it. What's interesting is that I teach a drum corps in Branford called Branford, Connecticut, called the Stony Creek Fife and Drum Corps. And my main goal going in there was, I don't want to screw this up. Like, I don't want to go in there and, try to like change their technique or try to change the way that they approach a 7-stroke roll. It was more or less, I don't want to screw this up. I want to just make sure everybody's on the same page. So to me, drumming is drumming, and excellence is excellence. So it doesn't really matter what the vocabulary is. It doesn't matter what you're playing on the drum. It just matters how, you interpret it. And to me, that's not much of a difference between a modern style and, an ancient style, if you will.
Yeah, but if you look at you made this beautiful presentation on our first digital Sird event, and I remember you made a rehearsal with your group, and for us it was really amazing how. And Mr. Simmer, like Mark does, and other group, I think, evolved in a technical point of view. I'm talking now as a Swiss drummer, when I look at I like the open way of drumming, the 100% technique, also the synchronization with the fifers, and also the sticking, very impressive. But I saw that you took, maybe this is the modern style, you have a completely different way of how you have the same motive in a classic way, but with a lot of more intonation, with a lot of more dynamics in the roll rudiments. So not changing the rudiments, but give them maybe a twist or I don't know. Is that something you wanted to do, or is it just, as you said, it came natural because you're just a better drummer than someone else? I don't know. No. It's an advantage. It's also with the drums,
Yeah, I don't know how it evolved. I would say that I've done it for so long that you kind of get bored doing the same thing over and over again. So when I'm in this position, I can be able to, we're going to play that a different way. I think if I'm being honest, I think it's straight out of pure boredom, like, wanting to do something completely different, while not trashing the traditional. I think that's completely important, where you don't want to create something that's going to be considered a slap in the face to people that have done it before you. But taking the instrumentation that you have, which is just the snare drum and a bass drum and fife, and being able to develop it in a way that is different. You still get the point across that it's fife and drum music, but maybe highlight some other sections. Maybe the bass drum is something that needs to be heard a little bit more against the snare drum, and not just an accompaniment to the bass drum or to the snare drum. Maybe the fife arrangements need to have a little bit more than just the melody. So to me, being able to change the stuff around, and I guess there's another part to the question too. We have exercise programs and warm-ups and all that stuff to develop the group, and I think that's because we want it to be at a high level, but people don't practice on their own individually for a volunteer organization as much as you want. So when they come to a rehearsal on Friday, we're working very hard, and we're going to make sure the last week or 2 weeks, depending on when you were at rehearsal last, that you did not practice. We're going to cram it all into that little bit of time. So just being able to develop, an approach that we can bring in somebody that has never really played before, somebody that's played in a Scottish pipe band group, somebody that has played in fife and drum corps when they were kids, but they're coming back now, being able to put them into a system where they can succeed is something that I wanted to develop at the Patriots for a long time. So I think we're getting close to it, but with anything, you're always having to make adjustments and change, or otherwise it's not getting any better.
Yeah, I love that. I love the whole comment, movement is life. So you have to move. You can't stay stagnant. Stagnant water goes stale, right? And I think it's interesting because we talk about vocabulary, and I feel like that's become a buzzword in a lot of rudimental drumming is the vocabulary. Okay, well, is the vocabulary strictly rhythmic? Is the vocabulary strictly dynamic? So is it metric modulation? I think that and I understand it, but it's also a season of life of how much do you understand? And when it comes down to very specific patterns of American rudimental drumming, it already starts to break down. Are you going to go from like 70s DCI, East Coast, West Coast? Are you going to go Phantom Regiment? Are you going to go American Fife and Drum? Are you going to go to Ashworth? Like you've got all these arms and tree branches that just start going everywhere. So a lot of people like look at the headline of the news article, they read American rudimental drumming, and they plop their whatever understanding of that on the conversation. What I think is interesting is, as we develop, and I will say this as an American, I feel very insufficient when it comes to language. So when people start talking about vocabulary, I immediately go to my English speaking language, and when I go to Switzerland, everyone speaks 4 languages. They're speaking Swiss German, French, English, Italian, High German, and I'm going, you could take that philosophy and immediately imprint that on music, because it translates. French is a very musical language. German's a very harsh language, and like kind of like aggressive language. A lot of people say English is just like not a very pretty language. So
paradiddle.
I like that there's in French saying it's the sound who plays the music, and I think it's exactly what you're saying. Is the way you're saying it is important, and not what you're saying it, and especially when we talk about music. And I like that what you're saying, and I think it has to do a little bit with the evolvement. It starts always, everyone wants to work on their techniques. Everyone wants to explain it. Everyone wants to show it to someone else. And I think that's a typical example, like you said. First of all, and this is typical Swiss as well, you first look, what are you doing? And you identify yourself with your own. And then you see the other ones, and then you are progressing together. And I think that what you just said, Brendan, is this community, this movement, what I appreciate very much. And I think it's the big success of both of you to showcase American drumming in a modern way, and I think there you are the master, getting it accessible. I think that's the key word. It gets accessible for everyone who likes rhythm, drumming, percussion, Scottish. And that's one key. And now leads me to my next question for the audience, before we also only praising ourselves, is who is your influence on a short list? Who influenced in what you're doing and kept you or brought you there where you are today?
Yeah, I've had many teachers and influences over the my life. Obviously Mark is one currently with all of the travel and just how he handles life. But my first teacher was Ed Rhodes. He was the guy that taught me how to play rundown rudiments, not very strictly. That was for Paul Cormier. But he was like the first guy that put a pair of sticks in my hands. But I've had so many teachers. Like I said, I don't know. It's kind of hard to put in in a short list. Paul Cormier, major influence. Working on a book with him now with Mark and George Willis over at Pulsa Musica. Yeah, Paul Cormier. I can tell you, my dad was a major influence on me when I was growing up, because he was a champion rudimental bass drummer. And I have these memories of a summer day, July. He'll turn the air conditioner off or the fan off in his bedroom, and he'll bring his bass drum, put it on the bed, take his shirt off, and it always felt like it was like 95 degrees in there, just like it was way hotter than any other room. And he'd just be sitting there practicing leading up to the Connecticut State meet for hours. Just this memory that I have, and I think to me, that was the work ethic that I learned when I was really young. If I wanted to be, considered one of the best drummers, I needed to put that work in. And, he did it. And to be perfectly honest with you, there were many competitions that he would show up and he knew he was going to win that day, but he still put the hours and hours of work into it. And that always stuck in my mind, his sweaty, hairy chest, just drumming in a really overly hot room.
I'm so glad you mentioned him, because he was for me my biggest influence in bass drum. Before I joined the US, I mean, I played the bass drum if I had to, but I had never understood what's actually the let's say the culture of bass drumming. And he was so humble, and he played there, and I never knew who was. Only on the end when he introduced himself, I because he was my first big influencer in bass drumming, to be honest.
Yeah, and he
was so humble. He never mentioned his name. And I didn't know that Mason was the royals of the drummers in that case. So I'm allowed to say that. And he was so humble, and it was show and tell in 100% way of living it, And when we talk about vocabulary before, he never had vocabulary. He was just himself and he playing. So it was amazing.
Yeah, and it's that humility too. To be able to, he doesn't, he's just a friendly guy. He's there to have a conversation. He's there to teach. One of the things that he used to teach a lot of junior kids. A lot of kids that moved on to different fife and drum corps, and for a while, those kids would always go to different groups, and it would bother him a little bit, but he would always say, it doesn't matter. As long as they're still playing, we did our job. As long as they're still playing and they're still with it and they're with another group. And I was never like that. I always used to be like, well, screw that.
May I ask you, was that for you maybe on one stage a problem that you had a father like that who was always playing with other kids? Because my kids sometimes say, now you go into your kids and play with them, So, so just to tell me, you are our father, but now you're going again to your other kids who have a different relationship. And they're teasing me. It's not lucky.
Yeah.
But you know what I want to say, to be very honest, it can be a legacy,
No. My parents were always very supportive, and maybe to a fault. We were never forced to practice. We always found our own way of motivating ourselves. The first time, quick story, I was 6 years old. I joined the junior fife and drum corps, and I hadn't practiced.
With 6?
I was at 6. I was 6. Yep. And I didn't practice. But they said, all right, well, we just had the torchlight parade, this Christmas parade that we have every year. So the first parade I was going to march was the Christmas torchlight parade. They said, all right, you're going to be in the color guard. And I thought, that's going to be cool. I can carry a gun. I'm going to wear a cool hat. And I showed up, and they gave me a large candy cane, that was 3 feet tall, and an elf hat that was dangling down. And I was so pissed off. I went home and I practiced. Supposedly, I don't know the real story. I wasn't around, old enough to really think about what I was doing. But apparently, I went home and practiced quite a bit, and I was back in drum by St. Patrick's Day. So, we always found our own motivation to get better, and we didn't really need that push from our parents or anything.
Or maybe it was a smart way of showing you where it goes to.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. As you get older, you start to connect the dots. Where oh, all right, I understand why he did that now. I get that. A lot of things start to make sense.
I gotta throw it in here. I think Donnie Mason, your father, is the consummate coach. He's always been that. And Nick was kind of like that too. They'd say certain things at certain times, and it was just a comment. And years later, somehow that comment would stick in your brain. It would come out and you're going, oh my God, that was like the most philosophical thing when I was 14 years old, that it made no sense until I was 35. And now it's like you have kids of your own and you start thinking about how you would teach them. Those moments come back out. And I feel like, I meant to bring this up earlier. I love when you're talking about what you're looking for in rehearsal, right? And what kind of things encourage other people, because we all go through these seasons of life, right? And we go through ups and downs, and you've been through yours, I've been through mine. And the amount of grace that you give students, because they're going to have to go through their season to like, quote unquote, get it, is, I mean, no one has a measuring stick for when someone's going to get it. Yeah. And, you know, you are like, you hope somebody gets it earlier in their career versus, you know, on their deathbed. But the balance of younger folks who end up getting it sooner than later, I mean, that's where like you're trying to figure out, how do you solve that equation? How do you get people to get it faster or younger or earlier? Because when we do get good, we do have that sense of self that's like, it's me. I want to be good. I want to be good. But if you don't have that, you never put the time in, like you said, with your father, yourself, to get that quality under your belt, to be really good at your one thing, right, be at the very highest level you possibly can be, to like put yourself down a little bit and say, okay, there are other people who are just as good as me in these other things that I can learn from. And I kind of have to put myself in the backseat so I can learn more of it. And I think like what I hear you talking about with rehearsal, you know, wearing an elf costume with a candy cane, like there are these moments that you reach back to and you're going, man, there are just punches in the face that we receive throughout our whole lives to be like, hey, figure it out. You're not all of it, right? You're a piece of it. You're a powerful piece, and like know your power, but like, how do you fit in the bigger story to help other people? And man, I'm telling you, like, to be around your dad as much as you've been around, like I would love to have been a fly on the wall for some of the funny crap that he's probably ever said to you, and like the stuff that he's like kind of put you through. But I just find that absolutely amazing.
Yeah, you know, like I said, you grow up into it. You don't realize, you know, what you have around you, and you know, the older you get, the more experiences you have. It's like, oh, all right, this makes a lot of sense now. So, yeah, just very fortunate, you know, to grow up in the way that I did. I very, very happy. I did want to say, like, we're talking about influences for vocabulary. One of my first trips, and actually this was our first trip, really, our first trip into the international scene. We were with Top Secret in 2002, 2005. Jeez. 2005,
yeah.
Gosh. And you know, that was my first time traveling outside of the country. I was 20 years old, and all of a sudden I was being exposed to all this international music. And that was a major influence on me. In fact, I was part of a fife and drum album called The Last Hour with the Madison Street Project. And all of that writing that I had done was the first time that I wrote any music, was all done during that trip. You know, on the airplane, and, you know, listening to the you know, the massed pipe bands, you know, all those influences. And to me, that has been the biggest influence, is being able to, you know, share these different cultures. And American rudimental drumming, to me, is not American anymore. It's a hybrid of everything that we have come across, and it's only getting better. When we were doing that piece of music for PASIC, we were going through, you know, like there was like a Scottish part and there was a Swiss part, and trying to put it all together. But I realized that the vocabulary that we were all using was all the same. It's all the same, you know, whether it's the hybridity is so it's never been higher in terms of where we're getting our influences from with the vocabulary.
When can we make you a lifetime member of Sird? I like that, especially as a chairman, well spoken. No, I think that's what we also do in Sird, and I think that's you showcase that in a very, and you could explain it in a very good way. And I think, Mark, we never had this discussion on vocabulary. I like that very much. We talked about styles, we talked about identification, we talked about heritage, we talked about education, definitely. What is the best practice? And I like that here, because we're talking here now about another topic. I think it's really this vocabulary. How do you say it to people? And for me, the key learning now, what you just said is as well, when we talk about education, you can't force someone, you can guide them, you can coach them. And I think the timeline, or the time it is the student who has to take the time what he thinks he needs to have it. And that's also something what we sometimes, definitely in Switzerland, where we are pushing so much and try to get quick as possible somewhere. I think it is also a very good point you raised up, that the time is chosen by the student.
Yeah, absolutely.
and it's not by we give them the time to doing it. It's they give us the time and the possibilities that they achieve it. I like that very, very much.
Yeah, I don't like forcing anybody to do anything anymore. I've done that.
Anymore. I like that word, anymore.
I used to be that guy. I would go home, I would be screaming. I think we are all guilty.
Mark, we are all guilty.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I just don't have the time or the energy in my life anymore. If you don't have it, you don't have it. And for a group like the Patriots, we have a new drummer that just came in. He was a drum set player growing up. He always wanted to join the Fife and Drum Corps. And get this, when he was a kid, he grew up in Wethersfield, where Colonel John Chester was. His parents wouldn't let him join the Fife and Drum Corps. They said, no, you can play drum set. So now this guy, he owns a coffee shop in Wethersfield on Main Street, and it's called Drum Roll Coffee. Really, really awesome place. But he decided that he wanted to learn how to play rudimental drumming. So he's 38 years old, 39 years old, and he's learning from scratch. And he's like, I'm going to get it by this date. I'm going to get it by March. He said, listen, don't worry about it. We have a plan in place. When you're ready to play, we'll be here. So there's no rush on it. And on top of that, I teach a lot of young kids, but I also have a couple of students that are in their 80s, which is pretty incredible. I have a guy named Leo who marched 1970s Drum and Bugle Corps, and he kind of made his way through Fife and Drum. And I've been teaching him for the last 2 years on Zoom, how to, develop his left hand. And he's 85 years old, and I'm 83 years old. I don't want to give him how old he is, but this guy still wants to get better. He still is hungry to try new things. And, that to me is inspiring. And I hope that I'm that same way when I'm his age, where I still have that desire to learn and to be better, and to understand I don't have it all figured out, because I won't ever have it all figured out.
Yeah, I love it. I think you're totally right. I'm guaranteeing that you and I are going to be on our deathbed going, want to learn one more thing before I take my last breath.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, this idea of the vocabulary piece, the expectation of a timeline piece, and all of that, because a lot of us want to have, obviously it figured out sooner than later. And that's that maturity balance of, do I recognize that the time commitment is going to be X versus Y? And what I find interesting is, if I'm good trying to articulate the words that I'm using, like that's one component. And a lot of teaching aids are going to say, if you can say it, then you can play it. You can't play it until you can say it. So you're talking about like the diction, the actual like technique of your tongue hitting your mouth, the back of your teeth to speak the words. Right. So that translates directly to like, all right, in my fulcrum, like where is the fulcrum in my right hand versus my left hand? Am I behind the cuticle? Am I on, in front of the cuticle? Like all that stuff with my fingers in what would be our version of American style. But in reality, you're dissecting such a high level of detail in that component where you're finding a fundamental. And then all of a sudden you start to recognize that the fundamentals of those vocabularies are transferable. And you start going, well, wait a minute. If I just change my right hand and I put my thumb underneath in this crazy thing I call Basel grip, I'm going to be able to like change where my fulcrum is on my right hand. And like, those are fundamental things if you've developed that level of excellence in the American style, quote unquote, American style. But to really go back even to what you're saying about this hybridity, it's an idea. And the idea of America was always based on hybridity from its very beginnings. Right. And it's just at that time America was founded, it was the closest thing they could find to what the most cutting edge thing would be. And so I love even like the history of this thing, living in DC, I'm a nerd about this, but Switzerland is called America's sister republic because the Swiss Constitution was based off of the American Constitution. So these ideas of how Switzerland is and how they've been able to take it up even another level of, you know, how we bring the international business piece into it. It's kind of always been about hybridity. So it's like, how do you teach a young student to bring it back to a drumming level where it's like giving them the skills to learn something to a level of excellence, get really good at it, have a quote unquote conversation with that vocabulary with another student, collaboratively put that together. And it's like you're building these kind of Lego pieces of mindset on how a kid today could be successful by looking for other things to build into their vocabulary and use drumming as the tool. Like it's honestly, it's very unique to have these conversations because you can't have this kind of conversation with just anyone. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you talked about your patriots, the groups. So how is it at the moment with COVID and all that? We do not have so much. We have a lot of rehearsal, but not so much where we can show. I see that globally there's an issue to how we can engage. How is the situation? I mean, I know you told us how you're doing it and you are bridging very good, but how you see, or what do you do, or what is the situation at the moment with the Patriots?
Yeah, the situation at the moment, I'm hoping it's getting better. We've been rehearsing. We had this past summer, the events were not as many events as we've had in the past. Obviously, the year before we didn't have that many events. So the drum line, anyways, we picked up golf. So we would get together on those days that we would have parades normally in the schedule, and we would have these big golf tournaments. Going back to the technique thing, that's why I'm loving golf so much, because you're having to like make these minor adjustments with how you're holding the club, and you keep having to figure that stuff out. I think that's why I'm drawn to the game so much, because I think about drumming at that level, just like what Mark was talking about before, where, you know, if I take my right finger and move it a little bit this way, is it going to affect the outcome of hitting a drum? You know, like those little things there. But to answer your question, we're hoping to be back on a normal schedule next year. The Patriots are hoping to go to London and then to Switzerland in the summer. So we're hoping.
So you're joining as well, the muster? Or what you want?
Yeah, we're hoping to go to the muster in Switzerland.
So we will see us then. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll, you know, obviously we're waiting to see, you know, how the world develops over the next, at least over the winter. But we're planning on it. I mean, I think to me, everything is kind of back to normal. We've been practicing the entire time. Just looking forward to getting back, you know, those parades and gigs that we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm. That's also then your common projects you're planning to do then.
Yeah. For projects I'm planning to
focus on that one and really getting ready.
It's getting ready, and you know, for the Fife and Drum Corps season, it's now is the time that we take a break, and you know, we kind of figure out what we're going to play the next year, and you know, figure out what the schedule is, and you know, with the Patriots, we're trying to do a lot more you know, community outreach. We have some things happening to be a little bit closer to the regular town people that are around us, and to let them know that we exist. We're involved with the University of Connecticut right now with their music program and their marching band, trying to, you know, reach our arms over there, and seeing how we can help them and maybe help develop Fife and Drum community at UConn as well. yeah, we're trying to do different things like that, where we're not just a group that gets together and practices. We were founded as a competition corps, and competition is not really existent anymore. So we've had to reinvent ourselves to be something different. And what we've been able to do is few of these, like we've done PASIC one year, we've done USARD and APRDC and all these little drumming events. So to me, that's what we're trying to do something a little bit different and getting out to different communities.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, it just came up in my mind, Mark. Sorry, a complete other question. What is now in my mind, because Brendan is the first one who commits himself that he's a competition group, and this is completely lost in all our former conversations with all the Americans. They have a difficult relationship with competition. Let me talk like this as a foreigner and outsider. In Switzerland, I'm also a little bit a critic on competition, because if we're only defining about competition, we only reach about 30% of the people, but we are still into that business. We still believe that this is how you're getting better and getting achieve excellency. And we have now the tendency and the discussion that we're saying we need more events. At the moment, we're looking into more events and into more sharing with Sirt. So that's the movement at the moment in Switzerland. How is it when you would say, Brendan, if how would you do it, or how would you reinstall the competition in the US to get that back? Because I think you could be the one who be successful together with Mark to get a new culture, I would say, to bring it in the 21st century. Let's say it like this. How would you do it? Or is there anyone who wants to do that? Because I think that's missing at the moment.
Yeah. No, it's totally missing. I'm a big proponent for competition, as long as it's set up in a fair and balanced way. It's educationally driven, and not, numbers driven. I think it's a completely important and necessary, particularly for the development of junior drum corps members. And so how would I start it? We've had these conversations. This is, we could file these under the conversation that we'll have, at a muster late at night, and we have to get it going. But to me, when it sort of petered out, that was when competition was the most positive. You would see junior members getting together after they competed individually, having a jam session, playing football, playing basketball. They were hanging out and having a good time, and it wasn't so. For instance, when my dad was competing, when he was 6, he started at the Connecticut Yanks Fife and Drum Corps, and they were very high level competition. They didn't know anybody in the other Fife and Drum Corps. They just stuck to themselves. And when Mark and I were competing, I went and hung out with the best drummers that I could find, and that was Josh Dukes and Mark and me and Tom Fantini over the Young Colonials guys, and I was like this young little kid, just like, show me what to do. Like, I want to hang out with these older kids, and that to me is the most important thing that was missing from when all those negative years of competition happened. So being able to develop the social aspect and the educational aspect, that has to be the thing that drives competition into the next, whenever that happens again.
Could it be possible? I mean, I looked into and had the same discussion with the Frenchies who started now. Also, they have this drum competition in the Brett family and so on. And when I look at from a global perspective, or in my experience, I think when there is a way to start, it should be with the young kids, like with the youth camp, or maybe start in the youth camp and have these masters where there's a combination mix of, so like you said, community, socializing, not only drumming, something else. And I think what I took also out of this conversation, and that could be something very valuable, is to have it in a very fair and transparent way, so that it's an understandable. Maybe you have to also write some new pieces where the young kids who are not that good anymore, maybe because you have to start somewhere, start with very basic things. So I like that very much. So it could be food for thought, I think.
Yeah.
I am raising that, and I didn't want to actually use that podcast to promote that, but you were the first one who really committed himself as a competition drummer. That's interesting.
I would be nowhere, and I think Mark could say the same thing about himself too. We would be nowhere if we didn't have those meets. We would have winter competitions where we would show up and we would have to play individuals, and I would be nowhere. And sometimes I would play bass drum. Sometimes I would play 4 times playing snare drum. That to me, that pressure that you have to put on yourself to be able to do that is enough right there to make you a better person, a better musician, a better percussionist. So, I would be nowhere without competition. I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And people like to use this analogy, but how do you get diamonds? You don't get diamonds without the pressure. And people are uncomfortable because people break under pressure. Everybody does, but it's the grit that you get by putting yourself under that pressure to have to perform. And I have to say this because I've never really put it this way until we've actually kind of unpacked this. The people who are the biggest naysayers about American competition are speaking from an experience of 30 and 40 years ago. They're not speaking from when it was most recent. And I think that's a very unfair perspective and an unfair position, because they had their version of it. And that's that whole as we grow, we start to recognize that things are different than our own experience. And so when we have folks that come to the conversation and they say, no, this is horrible because of X, and this whole line of why it's terrible, it's coming from something from the 1970s, the 1980s. It definitely was not like that when we were in it in the 90s and into the 2000s. So to be an effective agent of change, you have to recognize when your knowledge base is founded. And I think that's something that's very difficult for people to recognize, because they have to take a step back from what they feel is, everyone's a subject matter expert in their own life. So they're going to stand up for the things that they decide in their life was important because it affected them in a very powerful way. Now, what's unfair is if I'm going to be a subject matter expert on my life and try to imprint that on you, now all of a sudden we're not having that collaborative conversation because you're not allowing yourself to be affected by change. And I laugh when people say, well, we got to have the hard conversation. Well, we do. Are you open to actually having it? Because I bet you're not. You're going to just take your subject matter expert opinion on your experience and try to make me believe or live your life, not mine. And not to get on a soapbox about it, but fife and drum in New York has died. It has literally died because people could not get out of their own way. And I'm going to even say it out there and be a jerk about it because I'm from New York, and it makes me so mad that this level of excellence from the Sons of Liberty, the Kirks, the New York Regimentals, the Chippewas, all of these amazing corps are gone because the people who were leading these corps or leading these movements at the time could not get out of their own way. And unfortunately, that's something I see with these groups where someone's a leader. Are we developing these kids not only from a technical point of view, but are we giving them the right mindset? Are they acting like a Donnie Mason being a coach, giving them these tools? And that's what Nick would always say. Nick would always tell me all of these things were way more about life than they were about technique. And damn, I was learning a lot of technique, but it was way more about life than it was anything else. And I sit there going, the competition world will 100% make fifing and drumming better for a certain population of people. Reenacting will make fife and drum 100% better for a certain population of people. Marching in parades, going to musters. Now, if we chop off one arm, we're going to lose that entire population of kids that we could have met. And we did that very effectively by folks who are taking their 1970s or 1980s experience and making someone of 2021 have to live 40 years in the past. And I just think that's completely unfair.
And I have that same complaint for those that trash kids that want to try other avenues of percussion, other avenues of the marching idiom. Some kids that go to DCI and Drum and Bugle Corps, let them go. Let them do that. That's part of their experience. If you try to smother them and hold them down to this is where you come from and this is where you need to be and this is where you need to stay, they're going to lose interest. So you have to let these kids figure this stuff out and let them come back. And I think we're starting to see some of the dividends, for like a Patrick McHale, Phil Andrews, Kevin Thompson, who's down at the Old Guard right now. These guys that started in Fife and Drum Corps that went out to DCI, they're only making this bigger. They're only helping Fife and Drum grow globally to another aspect of where we come from. So to me, you have to let these kids figure this out, and you have to let them to fly. To squander any of these opportunities for them just because you heard about an experience that may have happened in the 60s and the 70s is complete BS to me. So, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I don't usually like being the guy to try to be divisive, but I'm going to be honest. I feel like no one has taken a stand to say what the positives are of it. And I feel like if I have to be decisive or divisive because I'm bringing up a positive, like that's a scary place. That's honestly, unfortunately, where a lot of things are today, is that people are afraid to bring up the counter narrative to something because they're going to get lambasted, but it's coming from an abundance point of view, a positivity point of view, an influence on the next generation point of view. And yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, like I think, and I've got to be like honestly careful about how you do bring it up, because you want to bring it up lovingly, you want to bring it up with grace. But there are folks that I've grown up with in the area that we grew up in the Northeast. When when you live in Louisiana for a while and you take the difference between someone who lives in Louisiana and someone who lives in the Bronx, like there's going to be some culture difference there, obviously. Are people in a season of their life where they're able to put down those walls and say, hey, we're just people? Or am I going to walk in like I'm the biggest, baddest dude because I'm the biggest, baddest dude? And unfortunately, that's a maturity issue. And I see that so often. And I always, as a kid, I'm going, oh man, that's just like a really tough guy. And I'm going, it's actually a very immature person. And I hate even bringing it up, but we make ourselves better and we make the community better when it's not about us. And I know I'm saying this kind of right now as I am being a hypocrite by even using this platform to say it, but I think someone's got to say it. Someone's got to stand up for it. Someone's got to support the kids doing as much as possible, because I love when Kevin Thompson went out for this Old Guard audition. And to talk about Kevin for a minute, he is so quiet. He is so humble. And his experience and his playing, and he is honestly, he's a master. And another one is Kevin Dill. Kevin Dill could be one of the finest American drummers I have ever seen ever play. And they're quiet, they're respectful, and they show up and they nail it. And I look at what they've been exposed to: classical percussion, playing piano, fife and drum, history, drum set, and it's like they have this like buffet of experience that allows them now to connect with even those other people. So my question and my challenge is not to you or anyone here, because I think we all understand this, but in traditional music, in the traditional arts, who are the ambassadors? Who are the diplomats on behalf of your craft that are going to help other people come to the table and have the conversation of how do we make it better for the future, instead of saying, well, I hated all of this because I had this third person discussion at one point about this one thing that made it all terrible. It's not right.
Completely agree.
I'm sorry that I pushed you in this emotional discussion, but I love it. I love it very much, Brent. So I hope you don't mind, but I think you showcased now, I mean, Mark as well, as we know, but you showcased now so much of your beliefs. And I think this is exactly what for me as let's say an outsider was curious to understand, where was it lost, and I think you brought it up in such a positive way, and not crying or be depressive about it. But I think maybe it had needed a little bit time, as we said again, needed time to bring a new generation and a new leadership, let's say, or ambassadors who you have also trust. Because in my experience, there's three major points when we talk about competitive drumming. It has to be the right environment, the right mindset, and trust. And I think I remember when I spoke with Victor as well. He was always judging in the US. And it was interesting because he said to me, I'm the Swiss guy who'd only have to be the number 2 as a judge because they are judging each other and they know each other. So they needed just someone there who they had to trust that it's fair. And I think that's interesting. You know, if you understand that, it is not you are better or you are badder. It's really about trust and fairness. And then the environment is a completely different, and the discussion is also a different one. And I think let's close it here. I think we could talk for hours on that one because today is about you. But I like to take that with me, and I'm sure we have this discussion again.
Oh yeah, and man,
this conversation today will be a start of a complete new project you ever thought about, and it's all about. And I like that authenticity. And Mark, you can take that ball. You are a good tandem to bring that, and I'm happy to support because I think if we are play that right, like you said, then we have everyone engaged. And what I could understand, and I love that podcast now really because I took so many things away from what you are believing, and we have all in ourselves. And I like that, and I think that makes that community we are all in so special and so unique. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, and I just want to say, man, I miss Victor. So I'm glad you brought him up.
But it just came into my mind when you mentioned that, like your father, he just was present, you know, and I said, now I got it.
Yeah, he certainly was a guy that had a lot of connections and was very, you know, important for developing this relationship that we have today, you know, being in the international scene. So, anyways, I really appreciate this, guys.
Absolutely. Before we let you go, just one real quick one on this too. So where can people find out more about you and things you're doing? So I know you've got a podcast, you've got some social media presence. So where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could follow me on Instagram, BD Mason Percussion. I'm on Facebook. I got a website somewhere. So yeah, I'm around, you know. Yeah, just send me a message on any of the social media places, and I'd love to talk with anybody.
That sounds great. And please, folks, check out the Bottom of the Glass podcast, where definitely interesting conversations happen just like this.
Yeah, well, they're pretty silly, but yeah, sometimes we're serious.
I love it. Brendan, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, guys. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.